rapidly changing era of really good updates and really fast updates that are happening today, right? So today I'll try and explore along with you a lot of key strategies and best practices that really are thriving today in the rapidly evolving landscape of AI. Right? The aim of this whole presentation today is to kind of give you some actionable insights and to be able to kind of help you in building and scaling AI initiatives. Of course, a lot of you are leaders and technologists here, and in your own ways of working and in your own capacities are kind of initiating this or leading some of these. So I'll try and see how I can help you with that and kind of make sure that I give you enough knowledge to be able to build effectively, securely, and ethically. Right. Coming to myself, I'm Sunil Kalkunte, and thank you for the introduction earlier, but just a quick 5 second about myself. I come with about 22 years of IT experience. I've been part of the and previously YML leadership, reporting to the CEO, and part of the engineering leadership kind of given me a lot of opportunities to drive a lot of technology change and of course business strategy driven by technology, right? And having been closer to technology, being a computer science engineer myself, it gives great pleasure to be able to be part of a lot of change that's happening today and be closer to it, and also kind of look at what is the upcoming opportunities for us to do really marvelous things, and especially with AI coming into the picture and Gen AI, the opportunities are boundless today in terms of what we can achieve and kind of do beyond our imagination. So that said, I'll try and take you forward and try and see what we can do today. So as a quick introduction, I'm excited to kind of take this opportunity to kind of walk you through this and how to build AI systems. And like we talked about earlier, build AI systems at what speed and scale. And of course, your real core topic of security. And I won't kind of make enough inroads into the topic because I'm talking to experts here. And I'll try my best to kind of keep myself honest here in terms of the exposure and experience I have with that, right? And I also will talk about how AI is kind of changing a lot of industries rapidly today, revolutionizing how businesses operate, how are they making decisions, a lot of data-driven decision making that's happening today, and how are they engaging with customers as well, right? A lot of this has changed in the last few years and compared to what had happened in the last 10 years, right? And as we navigate the shift, it's also crucial to understand how do we leverage AI to do it really effectively, right? And also ethically and sustainably, right? Purpose of this presentation today, right? And I basically want to be able to provide you with a lot of actionable insights, right? And strategies for being able to develop some of these systems, right? And drive a lot of these initiatives yourself. We cover some of the techniques and best practices that are driving some of that new revolution today, right? And how you can apply these to your own teams and organizations. And I'll focus on three main areas today, right? AI development and scaling some of those operations on AI, and how do we safeguard some of these systems. I'll also cover a little bit of in terms of importance of how do we build an AI first culture in the organization, and how do we maximize the benefits of the AI technology, right? And also this topic is really crucial in terms of the timeliness of where we are today, right? There's a lot of rapid advancement that's happening today, right? And this topic is more than relevant than ever, right? Whether you are in different domains of healthcare or fintech or manufacturing, any industry, right? AI is a vital tool today to be one competitive and also to drive innovation, right? By the end of the session, I'll try and have a roadmap in place to see how you can navigate some of these complexities and how to leverage for your advantage, right? And also as AI is continuously evolving, staying upgraded and keeping ourselves informed is also very key because of the rapid changes that are happening. And how do you make sure that you are using the latest and greatest and also the most effective tools at your disposal, right? I'll try and kind of keep it honest in terms of what knowledge exists today and what tools exist today, and to be able to see what is coming up in the future and anticipate some of those and how do we seize those opportunities, right? And also, I would really encourage you to think how AI is impacting your industry, your organization, and kind of look at sharing some of those thoughts today. I'll try and keep it more engaging, try and see how you can feel free to share some of those thoughts here. And I'm happy to kind of keep it more collaborative and keep it more conversational today, right? And rather than a sermon today, right? And I'll try and keep it honest as well. So, and we can also have Q&A or as we kind of move forward through some of these topics and also towards the end, right? I'll quickly cover some of the agenda for today, right? I'll quickly run through an introduction. I'll kind of talk about what the AI revolution means today, right? In terms of rapid advancements that are happening, what are the key growing impact areas today in industries? What is the key significance of staying ahead in this transformative era, right? I'll also kind of cover in terms of a context of why AI is just not a technology trend, but a lot more than that, right? How do we accelerate development on AI, right? Like we'll explore some of the techniques that are in vogue today, and some of them probably that are evolving as well, but not necessarily adopted fully, right? And best practices for some of the acceleration that you can achieve, right? Including how agile is kind of playing a role, and model ops, how low code, no code, some of those things, right? And how do we do transfer learning and all of that? So I cover some of that. And how do we also deploy and manage this at scale, right? How do we effectively scale some of these AI initiatives? Like, are there architectural patterns? Are there technologies like microservices, distributed AI systems? How do we kind of do that? And how do we understand how to manage AI loads effectively, right? So I'll kind of touch about some of that. And finally, thirdly, the most critical topic and probably the most crucial in terms of the audience here, right? How do we safeguard AI systems? And like I said, I'm not expert here, but the audience here is, and I'll try and keep it honest in terms of my exposure to some of these practices and look at what AI security means today. What are the potential threats that are being seen today? And what are the best practices in terms of protecting some of the systems and AI systems, especially, right? From things like data poisoning, adversarial attacks, or ensuring how do you comply to regulatory systems or practices today, right? Security is, of course, paramount in terms of how AI becomes more and more integrated into your business operations and how it kind of can impact the overall success or failure of the business in itself, right? Last couple of points I will cover off are basically how do you empower the organization, right? How do you build an AI first culture? How do you empower your teams, upskilling, collaborating, right? How do you build good practices to ensure AI is implemented in a more responsible and effective manner, right? And also, how do we get ready for the future, right? I'll kind of try and wrap up with forward looking in terms of what are the trends and future direction in AI. I'll try and keep it simple. There's a lot of material out there, but I'll kind of touch upon things that we could kind of navigate to beyond the session and kind of leave you some actionable insights on how to prepare for these changes as well, right? And I'll kind of recap towards the end, right? So, and in terms of what I want to achieve today, I want to make sure that today's agenda is designed to give you some amount of understanding of some of the strategies from development to deployment, security, and organizational empowerment, and how to think about these strategies and how do you apply these to your work, right? And we can discuss some of those during the Q&A session as well, right? And also in terms of interactions, I would love some interaction today, and feel free to ping and kind of ask questions, and also have some polls that I will kind of push through so we can have a lot more of insights coming back from the audience here, and I'll try and see how we can kind of engage a lot more, right? So I'll kind of move into my first topic in terms of understanding the AI revolution and its impacts across some of the industries today, right? I don't have to talk a lot about the journey of the AI. I think all of you are familiar. I'll just kind of use a little bit in terms of the journey itself, right? AI is not new, right? It's been there for the last 50 to 75 years in terms of how AI was something else and used to be very different in terms of what we understand today. But AI existed when we talk about artificial intelligence, computerization, to how things were getting automated, to how things were being done in terms of an autonomous manner, intelligence. A lot of this existed already, right? In terms of the last few years, we've witnessed a lot more extraordinary pace in advancement, though, right? In terms of, first of all, the breakthrough in foundational models, right? Like GPT-4 or development of multi-model AI system. These have really changed how AI is able to handle a lot more complex tasks today compared to earlier, right? Whether it's generating videos, audios, images, sound, content. The era of Gen AI kind of changed how we work, right? And of course, a lot of that debate is happening about how is this going to impact our world, our jobs, and everything else. But I would probably think of it as a lot more of a complementary partner to accelerate or do a lot more of sophisticated work that we probably would have taken a lot more time to do, but it's now there for us to leverage and do a lot better work at what we can do, right? And also in terms of adoption, AI is not just a tech trend like I talked about earlier, right? It's becoming a cornerstone of strategy. And as I kind of sit through some of these strategy discussions and look at where customers are pondering and looking at investing, whether it's healthcare, whether it's finance, elsewhere, right? Like, for example, in healthcare, how is AI enhancing diagnostics? How is personalized treatment becoming reality, right? how is it like leading to better patient outcomes, right? A lot of these in terms of detecting early detection of diseases and all that is crucial, right? In terms of cancer, where it's able to at least detect like 30% better, right? In terms of early detection and all that. It's kind of really a cornerstone in terms of how we look at Medicare and healthcare for overall humanity, right? And in finance, like a lot of you would have seen, especially in banking or in terms of fraud detection and risk management, right? AI is crucial today, right? Especially in terms of things that we see today as a lot more of digital adoption, whether we talk about UPI in India and elsewhere, and how much of fraud is prevalent today. AI is playing and continues to play a lot more of a critical role, right? And how is AI and how are AI models reducing a lot more of this false positives, and how do financial institutions, right, save time and also resources in terms of enhancing their security? It's crucial today, right? And in manufacturing, AI is kind of already doing a lot of predictive maintenance, quality control, transforming operations, and a lot of predictive equipment failures that are happening today, right? And it's enabling a lot of these companies to reduce a lot of downtime, which pretty much like if you're reducing downtime about 40% or more, significant cost savings, a lot more of improved efficiency on that, right? And also in terms of high economic impact and in terms of where it is enabling the overall global economy, right? So it's not just about operations, right? It's significant economic value and competitive advantage as well, right? Global AI market is always what CAGR of 37%, 36%, about $1 trillion economy by about 2030, right? In terms of the annual global AI market. And that growth is not just fueled by just people, right? It's our technologies, fueled by a lot of investments in venture capital funding, AI startups, reaching almost 90 billion in 2023 and growing strong from there, right? And growing even further in 2024, right? And across different domains again, right? And it's not just statistics. These numbers are not just numbers, right? They represent that AI is real, right? They represent the transformation power that AI brings for us, and it's driving innovation, it's driving economic growth across a lot of industries, right? And some of these in terms of, let's say, IBM Watson, right? And IBM Watson Health is already using AI, right? In terms of analyzing a lot of large medical data to find better patient care insights. JP Morgan have already implemented AI for automated trading and risk management, right? And companies like Siemens are already using AI for like predictive maintenance and all of that. So some of these are already real. It's not just trends, right? Or future trends that are being talked about, but they're already in play. They're already in companies that are using this and also saving and making money, right? And as we look forward, and a lot of the impact is just about, is only going to grow, right? By 2030, it could contribute almost 15, 16, 17 million to the trillion to the global economy, sorry. And in healthcare alone, the market for AI is huge, right? And it's expected to be at least 100 plus billion, right, in the near future. These projections are not just numbers, right? It basically underscores the need for organizations to kind of stay ahead of these trends, because that's where the business opportunities are really massive. And it's organizations will be at loss if they're not getting prepared for where the future is and where AI is integral to this strategic operations, right? In basically, in a summary, AI is very rapidly advancing, transforming pretty much every industry that we all know, right? And we all use and touch, right? And a lot of opportunities for anybody who can harness it powerfully, effectively, right? We'll kind of dive a little bit deeper into how do we accelerate some of these AI led development, right? And how do we leverage some of the advancements to stay competitive? Let's move to my next topic, which is accelerating AI development, right? When I cover some of these, right, and I'll try to see how do we, I'll try to discuss how all can actually spend up or speed up AI development to keep pace with a lot of the rapid development that's happening today, right? And a lot of the market demand that's also really fast, right? Our focus will be mostly on the techniques and best practices, right? To kind of make sure that we bring the right AI solutions to the market and really fast, right? Age-old tested agile methodologies and iterative development. A lot of you are probably experts in it and been doing that for a while. But for some of you uninitiated, agile sprint and like agile methodologies like sprint planning, daily stand-ups, really crucial for any kind of project, and especially for AI projects as well, right? They make sure that the whole teams are aligned. They're able to adapt to a lot of changes. Iterative development is very, very valuable because AI will kind of let you take some of these forward and allow you to refine some of these models continuously as new data, a lot of new insights emerge, right? It's much easier to kind of handle change, right? A lot of newer like ML ops and model ops. Model ops is of course a larger superset over ML ops. And how do we kind of extend DevOps into doing a lot of model ops, right? And bring the entire AI lifecycle from development to deployment and kind of make that a lot more structured and governed, right? A lot of key components for that, including like model versioning, testing, monitoring, retraining, right? And a lot of that will ensure that the model remains accurate, right? And less prone to errors, less prone to hallucinations over a period of time, right? And a lot of model op usage also enhances a lot of collaboration, right? To make sure that we are kind of reproducing uh, uh, a lot of, reproducing reproducibility, governance, leading to faster and more consistent model deployment. I see some Mohammed Murshidi has raised the hand. Do you want me to pause and take a question, Vijay? I don't know if it was something that we
No,
wanted to do.
I believe that was related to some of the CPE,
Oh,
which
okay.
Van said.
Okay, so I'll continue, right?
Yeah, please continue.
Oh, sure. Of course, a lot of you are probably also familiar with low code, no code platforms as well. And that's not just for regular app development. There's also low code, no code AI platforms today, right? Things like Google Auto ML, Microsoft Power Platform. They're basically what they're doing is democratizing AI development. It's not just niche. It's not just certain developers or certain companies that can do it, but a lot more prevalent in terms of how platform is accessible to a lot more people to be able to learn and do a lot of these, right? And you don't necessarily you need to know a lot of deep coding skills to build these AI models. That used to be the case earlier. Of course, you need to know a little bit of math, but you don't need to know a lot of deep coding. A lot of the tooling will help you kind of build some of these, right? It also will make a lot of businesses, it will make it easier for business users, domain experts to participate in the whole AI journey, right? And not just in journey, but in project development, a lot of acceleration in terms of development and innovation, essentially, right? It's also predicted, right? In terms of by 2025, at least 70% of the new applications that we're going to be developing will be on low code or no code technology. That's how fast these technologies are evolving and how much adoption is also picking up today, right? And it's also in terms of shifting to a lot more accessible AI development, right? There's also this concept of transfer learning and foundational models, right? When we talk about BERT and GPT, they're all transforming AI development, right? They are basically foundational models, right? They allow teams to fine-tune pre-trained models on very specific tasks. You can build your own GPTs, right? It will reduce the need for a large data set to be able to maintain or to be created on your own, right? If they have all of it, you build on top of it, right? Which means it'll speed up your development process because you don't need to do fundamental ground up stuff. They're taking care of it already, right? They also give you a very strong starting point for a lot of applications, right? And it'll reduce almost 60 to 70% of your dead time, depending on where you want and what you're trying to achieve, right? And improve a lot of performance with a lot of less effort that you need to put in, right? There's also a lot of tools and platforms that are there, like TensorFlow, PyChart, right, and Keras. They offer a lot of simplification in the development process, right? They have a lot of pre-built libraries, a lot of community support, a lot of powerful performance capabilities that you should be able to accelerate, and you don't have to reinvent the wheel on a lot of things, right? And choosing the right tool depends on what you're doing in your organization, right? And what the team skills are, how quickly they can adopt to some of these tools, how quickly they can adapt to some of these changing tech as well, right? And selecting the right platform and the tooling will really help you accelerate some of this development and enhance a lot of productivity for your teams, right? So one of the things that I, of course, recommend everybody to do is like to explore some of these techniques. Of course, some of you are, or most of you would be leaders having your own teams. You could encourage some of your teams to explore some of these techniques and look to see how they can bring in some of these innovation or even some of the POCs they could do, right? To how do you kind of look at some of the low code, no code platforms or existing libraries, right? And of course, by leveraging some of industry standard practices, you will be able to speed up definitely, right? And stay ahead in a competitive landscape, right? Now that I've covered some of the AI-led development or accelerating development, I'll look at some of these in terms of some of the architectures that kind of define how do we even build some of these, right? And really robust architectures and best practices for that, right? And before I get there, I just wanted to see if I can start engaging some of you in terms of how many of you have kind of been in AI development today and kind of what I talked about, right? How much of that has resonated with you, right? What are the biggest challenges that you faced, right? And I'd love to kind of hear at least a few of you kind of put it in the chat or maybe speak up and we can kind of look to see what you kind of see as something that's not covered here, or maybe overlapping, and you're reinforcing some of that concept that we talked about.
Yeah, Sunil, let me start.
Sure.
Okay. This is one of the hot topic of today in every sessions and every sphere of the organization. But many of the people everyone was using the standard automation, and some of them just converted that automation into the word to AI. And I think so. The whole organization or the whole industry, it's not literally leveraging the AI and ML capability in its literal meaning. That is one of the biggest challenge which we have seen, that when you talk about somebody and are you using AI? Yes. But when you go into deep and you are not seeing that they are literally using the AI capability, that's one. But yes, we are part of some of the biggest developments and biggest usage of AI. As you rightly mentioned that it's going to be covered in your subsequent slides. One, what is the structure for AI? And people don't create anything; they just go and start doing it. Second, and nobody considered the security at the beginning, and like any other things, and like our IPv4, correct? It was intended for something else. Then that is a way, and the people are considering the security into the AI. The third one, the right usage of the tools and the technology, right integration, it's not happening today. That's one of the biggest challenge. Okay, at this time, and I take 30 seconds more for us to talk about the Bangalore chapter so that people can just refresh themselves. As you know that this Bangalore chapter is one of the largest chapter in India, and with more than 2,400 members. Okay, and also, and we conducted similar sessions. Generally, try to cover 2 sessions in a month, the CPA sessions, and sometime, and it will be 1 in a month. That is where we are helping our all the participants to maintain the overall CPE for continuing their certification. Everyone knows that there are 120 CPEs required in a span of 3 years and 40 per year. However, at least you need a 20 in a year to maintain your certification. That is what ISACA Bangalore chapter does it. And that's one. And the second, the ISACA chapter, Bangalore chapter also conduct the review classes for all the domain, for all the certification, mainly for CISA, one of the biggest one, CSAM, C-RISC, CDPSC, CGIT, all the 5 we cover. We request everyone to go through the Bangalore chapter webpage once in a while we send the communication to all the Bangalore chapter members. But I know that many of the members are not from Bangalore chapter today. And you can also leverage our review classes, CP session. And also, we are also coming up with one open source cyber security training on 21st September. And you can leverage that as well. At this time, and I'm just... any other query or any other person has any query, I can read it. Yeah, one of the questions now, the availability of quality data for predictability is one among topmost challenge faced in AI project when expectation with respect to degree of accuracy is very high. Now, that's a question from Bikash Kumar. I'll not say question, that is his comment actually.
Correct. Yeah, that's one of the profound challenges that pretty much anybody faces in terms of data, right? I think that's where a lot of the development is also happening, especially when it comes to data sanity, data governance, right? And making sure that the right data is in place for us to be able to use the AI tools. As well, kind of looking at a lot of AI-led problems, especially hallucination and things like that, right? So I think, because thanks for sharing that. I think quality data is, and there's only so much you can do with synthetic data, right? And you have to have really high quality data and also large historical data to be able to do a lot of really good AI prediction models or AI model in that. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. Anybody else? Any other obstacles that you kind of faced in AI development? I'll just take maybe another 10 seconds to hear any other tools that you might have used that you want to share for AI development that's kind of led to acceleration or really good adaptability with your teams?
I'm not seeing any comments or chat or raising the hand. Okay, Rohan has raised his hand.
Right.
Rohan, okay, let me try to unmute you. Rohan, 1 second. Yeah, Rohan, you can unmute and speak.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, Rohan, we can. Thanks.
Yeah. So, one of the challenges that the customers face when they talk to us about AI development is the lack of regulatory compliance regimes that they face. We know that there is EU AI Act, and then there is the NIST standard and ISO and so on and so forth. But how do you see the overlap between the existing data privacy rules, be it GDPR or let us say the Indian Personal Data Protection Bill, and especially around data residency and data localization, which actually does not, at this point in time, does not gel well with the state of development of AI models, because data residency and having the data located within a country might not work. So, how do you see that panning out? And that is one of the challenges that we see, especially the regulated industries having concerns about it. Thank you.
Right. Yeah, thanks, Rohan. I think I have that probably covered in one of the subsequent slides, but yeah, I think
Yeah.
fantastic point as well, especially given the regulatory environment is also changing, right? And understanding of that regulatory environment also from the policy driving perspective also is changing, right? Even including the India laws, right? Like you rightly pointed out, data localization and storage of data has evolved in terms of what the federal government thinks as well, right? Where could you host it? So I think some of those is currently affecting in terms of what natively you can kind of develop and be as a challenge in terms of some of the use cases that are getting developed. But I think in a lot of scenarios, that policy decision making is accelerating as well because the productivity is also increasing, right? But there's also a two-step process that the federal government thinks in this way, right? In reality, at least the Indian federal government, right, does not necessarily want you to automate a lot of stuff and take jobs away, right? They want to make sure that there are jobs getting created. So there's a lot of policy that will go in hand in terms of job creation, at the same time in terms of bringing efficiency and innovation, right? So I think some of these use cases will probably have to tackle that aspect and in different demographies as well, right? And not necessarily in India demographic context. In terms of what real use cases are able to kind of take advantage of this, and especially let's say HIPAA compliance in the US or like medical data, right? That is advancing a lot more, right, in the US compared to India because the data is very unstructured, not available, not necessarily a lot of regulation available today in terms of covering that, right? So I think some of these use cases will continue to evolve. Some of them are getting piloted and some of them are kind of already in deployment in some cases, right? So like you rightly said, it also depends on how the regulations are evolving. But it is a challenge that is there today, and I think it's tackled both by industry and government collaboration, essentially in terms of where data is hosted, what is the amount of data that you could actually have access to as well, right? As companies, right? You can't just open up everything and have access to everything, right? That's also been a problem earlier. So yeah, I'm sure that's kind of more an evolving process, and I think it's a lot more acceleration now given the complexity that's already been come in, in terms of the tool set that's there, right? And to be able to achieve a lot of success today. So yeah, I hope that kind of
Thank you.
Cool. I'll move into my next topic and kind of how do we deploy and manage AI at scale, right? I'll touch upon some of the concepts that are necessarily architectural in nature, and I'll try and keep it simple and not go too complex in terms of the jargons themselves, right? And as AI becomes integral to it, it's very crucial to understand how do we kind of use these tool sets, how do we kind of use some of these very effectively and reliably, right? Some of the architectural patterns basically that are very prevalent have been prevalent for a while. Essentially, the whole microservices, containerization, how do we break the AI applications down into smaller, manageable, modular components? How do we make sure that we are able to scale them independently, right? This approach is highly flexible and also reduces a lot of the risk on system-wide failures, right? It is basically separation of concern, basically isolating pockets and components that are independently functioning, and make sure that the failures and everything else is localized to that and not necessarily system wide, right? A lot of these components and platforms, right, like Docker, Kubernetes, they enhance a lot of the scalability for packaging some of these AI applications, right? And along with all the dependencies that I needed, assures a lot of consistent performance and across different environments. And of course, a lot of this is compounded by the fact that a lot of the cloud providers are offering some of these right beyond that, right? And a lot of serverless computing that's come in right today, like AWS has something called Lambda, Azure has something called Azure Functions, right? You can run AI models without managing the underlying infrastructure. You don't need to know what the system is underneath. You can use Lambda functions. Should be able to build very quickly without knowing, do I need 2 machines? Do I need 3? Will the machine be uptime, things like that, right? It drastically reduces, in terms of scaling, what amount of resources you need, and of course on demand. It's cost effective, and it's also efficient in handling a lot of variable workloads, because the scaling happens at the cloud provider end, and it's transient to you, right? It's not necessarily something that you have to manage actively, right? With serverless computing, you also pay only for what you use, right? For the compute power that you need. It's basically is a very crucial aspect, especially when it comes to AI and models, because it's hugely compute intensive. It also reduces a lot of costs, especially with a lot of sporadic and unpredictable usage patterns, right? And it'll let you kind of manage some of that cost effectively, which is a very crucial aspect in terms of when you start building out systems for scale. A lot of the newer, like edge AI, federated learning, right? Edge AI also processes a lot of data locally on certain devices rather than on centralized cloud. It reduces a lot of latency, which makes it a lot more faster, and it also improves and handles some of the data privacy issues that are prevalent today, right? And especially in terms of healthcare and finance, where a lot of real-time decision making has to happen and can happen confidentially and securely on local devices, right? So we also minimize a lot of data back and forth, especially the cloud, so which reduces a lot of bandwidth, and also reduces the whole risk of data transfer and data loss or data theft that happens, right? Also responsiveness for the whole application. Federated learning is a lot more decentralized in terms of how the models are basically trained, right? Across a lot of devices, across servers, without exchanging a lot of raw data, right? That also ensures that the privacy and compliance is taken care of, and essentially where industries are handling a lot of sensitive information, right? So it's also a lot more in organizations that are collaboratively learning and lead to more
Sunil, you are breaking.
prevalent, especially am I?
Yeah, now
sounding
you're
okay?
back. Now you're back. Yeah.
You are back. Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
Probably
I'll
last two line you can repeat. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I'll just come back on the distributed computing frameworks, right? I was talking about frameworks like Spark, Apache Spark, Horvath. AI training is essentially scaled across a lot of multiple machines, a lot of parallel, right? In terms of processing large data sets, a lot of complex models more efficiently, right? It basically reduces a lot of training time, right? And a lot more faster deployment of models, and also in terms of frequent updates to that, right? I'll kind of look in terms of what the ML ops or ML ops best practices that are managing for a lot of AI lifecycle at scale today, right? So machine learning operations, it integrates DevOps that has been prevalent all this while, right? And it kind of it's in kind of builds on top of DevOps principles, but builds into the AI lifecycle, right? To manage models from development through to your deployment and monitoring, right? A lot of the key practices that are prevalent there are including like a lot of automated model versioning, CI/CD pipelines for the real-time monitoring of model performance, right? Basically ensuring that the models are consistently high performing and up to date, right? MLOps frameworks will also help in a lot of governance that are needed, and like we talked about some of those aspects earlier, making it easier to align to compliance and regulatory standards, and also our policies, right? And that's also evolving because a lot of companies are evolving how they need to be able to handle AI data, and compliance to some of these things is essential as well, right? So I'll just take a couple of examples as well, right? Netflix uses complete microservices architecture. Netflix OS's library that they've published is industry leading, right? And in terms of managing their distributed machine learning pipelines as well, they use some of these frameworks and make them open source as well. They use these distributed pipelines to deliver a lot of personalized content, though, right? Like anybody using Netflix will kind of look at how the recommendations are so unique to each, right? And it's not repetitive, right? And every time you kind of watch something, it's learning, it's able to kind of give you a very personalized recommendation, and it's doing that at scale, right? It has about 200 to 250 million users globally, right? And it's managing that personalization at scale, right? That architecture that they're kind of using allows them to process a lot of data coming in, because every time you watch or unwatch or start a program, that data is flowing in. It's a lot of data that's kind of managed, right, and providing a lot of seamless user experience for you, right. And Grow basically uses a lot of serverless computing, right, and a lot of graph neural networks, real-time fraud detection, essentially, right, across billions of transactions daily, right. They scale on demand, a lot of quick and efficient fraud detection that happens, and without compromising a lot on cost and performance, right. So as I kind of wrap this in terms of what scaling means, right, and essentially it's essential for maximizing one AI's benefits, and also to make sure that your AI tools are really high performing. Else you'd not probably have the same kind of adoption that's needed, because you can't have a user waiting endlessly for, let's say, an AI agent to be responding on a help chat or something, and they'll probably lose a journey there, right? I'll also discuss in terms of how we secure AI systems, especially in terms of the context of today's topic, right? And the most crucial step, essentially, in terms of protecting AI investments and maintaining trust in AI-driven decisions, right? So I'll just jump. I mean, I want to cover a little bit of the microservices and monolithic architecture, but for folks who kind of not dealt with monolithic versus microservices, just to brush up in terms of what monolithic meant and in terms of what the whole microservices meant, right? Breaking up a lot of the existing compounded and bulked up components into different services, which are having its own set of isolated operations, isolated concerns of operations as well, and may be able to manage that effectively, right? So that's kind of where we were. So cool. And just the ML ops lifecycle that I kind of wanted to just brush and show you what the whole, and it's automated as well, right? And you're basically developing a model, you're training it, you're packaging it, deploying, and all the automation and monitoring is basically letting you do a lot of these more effectively, right? It integrates the existing DevOps principles into the whole AI lifecycle, right? And the whole thing basically lets you version, do a lot of continuous integration into pipelines, and also make sure that the governance, like we talked about, is much more effective, right? So I'll just do a quick poll, right? I just want to take a break and kind of make sure that I kind of have a little bit more engagement coming in. I'll just run a quick poll to see what your experience has been, right? And what has been your biggest challenge, essentially, as you kind of build and scale AI. I'll just start a quick poll from here. Let me know. I've just launched. Give me 1 second.
Probably you can give a half 1 minute for.
Yeah. I'll just give a minute for people to kind of respond, and we'll kind of have a little bit more conversation on what people are seeing as their challenges, and I'd love to kind of hear a little bit more experience coming through here, because a lot of people would have used some of these or used alternates as well. I'd love to hear some. Okay, I'll give you 30 seconds more to kind of put in your work.
Definitely.
All right, just about 1 minute and I'll end the poll. And I see a lot more of responses are in for C and E, right? And I'd love to hear though, right? Essentially, when you say option C, which is a talent gap, right? Which is the most biggest challenge that you're facing today, right? In scaling AI, right? What, and maybe some of you can kind of talk about what strategies have you kind of looked at to bridge this talent gap, right? And maybe for the rest of the groups, it'll kind of be a real good learning as well to kind of share that experience.
If anyone wants to speak, they can raise their hand and I can unmute. Okay, Sunil, I don't believe. And
Got it.
1 second.
Yeah, I see one. Yeah.
Giri, 1 second.
Yeah.
Let me unmute him.
Sure. Yeah, we'll just take just a couple of them and then we can move on.
Giri, you can speak now. Giri, you can speak.
Am I audible?
Yeah.
Thanks for giving the opportunity, sir. This is Giri here, working for Canara Bank. Yes, we are doing a lot, especially in AI ML, adopting AI ML models for predictions, as Sunil sir told, specifically in SOC operations, firewalls, and AI ML based chatbots. But yes, we are internally, if you see, uh, that much expertise is not there. But we understand, we have a flavor of the subject. But yes, in-house development is yet to kickstart. So this is where we are having some challenges.
Giri sir, how are you, and how is your leadership? And I'm sure you're part of that leadership team as well. How are you tackling that, especially when it comes to that gap that you're addressing?
See, actually, we are. I'm currently working for a Grameen Bank of Canara Bank. I'm heading the IT operations of this bank. We are working on this implementing AI ML chatbots, specifically to a predictive based, as I rightly said, learning based and responding to the queries raised by the customers. But yes, as of now, that what we are doing is we are working with some of these startup companies to overcome these gaps. But yes,
Got
it
it.
will take some time to overcome to develop this internal talent.
Right. Yeah, it is a
Thank you,
little
sir.
bit more democratized these days. And thank you for sharing that, Mr. Giri. I think this is really insightful for you to kind of step forward and speak up, and really value that feedback here. I think, yeah, in terms of what you're sharing, I think that's pretty much where everybody is, right? I think there's a lot of shortage of talent as well, and the right talent. I think attracting that talent is going to be very difficult, but I think the talent that maybe approaching certain force is probably the go-to strategy that we are adopting as well, right? And that's a no-brainer. I'm sure everybody's going to do that, but I think that's kind of where we will start to bridge some of that in the longer term. I do love to invite one other person if anybody wants to share the last or the second one that we kind of chose, right? Integrating with existing systems, and that being the challenge today. And if anybody could share, like, what are the challenges that you face? How are you approaching to solve them?
I saw one person raise a hand, but I can't
Sure.
see now. Maybe they can raise a hand, or yeah, but I can see Arif. 1 second. Arif.
Yeah, Ari from Riyadh chapter.
Yeah.
Hello, Mr. Arif.
Arif, you can try now.
Okay, I think I just clicked unmute, so I'm hopefully audible right now.
You are, sir. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Sunil, for such a brilliant presentation. It's been really good thus far. I just wanted to express my thoughts on implementation of the AI models in our internal audit, and my thoughts were more along the poll results, which are just showed on the screen. Because in terms of bridging the talent gap, I feel that a double-pronged approach would be most beneficial. One would be to, as Mr. Giri was just pointing out, that use some outside consulting, some startups to bring in ideas and help internal audit functions and any other functions of the organization with their AI journey. But I feel the most, and I'm talking from an internal audit perspective, is that the most important piece would be to develop the existing talents and develop their own AI skill sets by using the vast MOOCs available. There are dozens of webinars and Coursera courses, Brilliant.org courses available, because I feel that bringing in exclusive AI talent will always be a short gap solution. In the long run, we need to develop our own internal audit resources, our own auditors, for them to be able to be up to speed with whatever the future holds for them. So just expressing my thoughts on the general approach I feel the internal audit departments across the globe should take. Thank you.
Yeah, fantastic, Mr. Arif. I think that's really, really important in terms of sharing real life examples of what you're trying to do. And I think that's where it gives us a leg up in terms of making sure that we're able to collaborate and use some of that knowledge as well. So truly appreciate you sharing that. All right, I have one more poll to go. And Mr. Rajat, there's one more hand raised by Mr. Jagdishan.
Yeah, I'm just typing. 1 second.
Sure.
Jagdish, you can unmute and speak.
Yeah, thank you for this opportunity. See, actually, in terms of talking about AI integration and other things, I have a question. Can I have that question here, or I should have this question parked to last?
No, feel free. I think what I'm trying to do here is one, we're trying to see what are the integration challenges that you're seeing that, right? Because I've not gone deeper into some of the technology aspects here, but I'm trying to
Yeah.
source a lot more of collaborative answers here because there's a lot of industry representation here, and I'm sure we'll probably get an answer in terms of maybe few of them doing a lot of these, and we can kind of learn from that as well. So I'm trying to avoid a textbook approach in terms of where I kind of preach some of these. So please feel free, and we'll kind of see if we can answer
See,
that.
my question is with respect to the previous person whoever spoke about internal audit, talent.
Mr. Arif,
Yeah. So having talent internally to get this internal audits done for the AI technologies and ML used there. But my question is there anything that as a internal auditors or information security compliance take care of, we should go through and understand about AI and ML in terms of compliance management?
Mr. Arif, do you want to take the question, given you kind of talked about some of the auditing that your firm is doing? I mean, in terms of my approach, I don't kind of work with the CISO also. I don't think I'm as equipped, Mr. Jagdish, to kind of answer that question, but I'm sure we can kind of see if some of the esteemed attendees here probably have an opinion there.
Yeah. Okay, maybe Jagdish, and can you just repeat the key crust of the question because it was a very long one?
Okay. See, the thing is, as of now, we are all, doing internal audits with respect to whatever standard compliance available, right? Now, slowly, all these ISO 27001 and CISA, everywhere we are seeing the integration of AI topics over there. So my question here is, do we have any specific courses newly upcoming for all the compliance management and audits with respect to AI and ML?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, now let me answer two things. And there is a course available in the market for AI, and I'm also going through that in September for a 5 days course. It's AI implementation as well as auditing. That's point number one. But what generally the organization doing today, because at the end of the day, AI is saying that it's automatically gathering the information, it's analyzing and giving you the insight, correct? What we do, we integrated our AI with some of these ISO as well as PCI, HIPAA, and GDPR and some of the other regulations requirements. And we automatically gather the information using our AI, and it's continuously learning through ML. And then it will give you an insight every day morning. Are you compliant with your bare minimum required insights? And we have a couple of organizations have already developed some of the tools internally for gathering such information and giving you the thought process for CISO and the CIO.
So moreover, Rajesh, ISO, we did the training, correct? ISO 42001, that is a new one which we did the training. So that is a one training properly you can look into it, yeah, from a knowledge and training aspect and certification point of view.
Yeah, Jagdish, and more information you can reach out to me or Raj afterwards. Then we will be able to give more details. Okay.
Sure, Rajesh. Thank you very much.
And one more question now. This is from Venkatesh. If someone wants to upskill in ML AI, what are the best courses? Okay, that's the same one. Okay, so we answered. Venkat, and you can reach out to us specifically for this. Okay.
So Rajesh, say for example, we were doing as a part of the annual pre-annual conference, we did the Gen AI training, correct? So so that was an one-day training, so which we are we try to give that the basic tool of the Gen AI and the AI part. So we are planning to come out on the probably a 3 days kind of training. It's a fully hands-on training. I know that there are constraints. Say, for example, if you go for a ready-made training or the pre-recorded training, you may have a kind of a doubt, probably inevitable solve. So that's what Isaka is going to do. So as Rajesh is rightly said, ISO 20, ISO trainings are there. But what from a Isaka point of view, there are the basic training, the AI trainings are there. A lot of artifacts are available in the Isaka website. From a chapter point of view, we will be doing a more deep dive into the AI and Gen AI training, and from an audit point of view with our partners. So that you can stay tuned for that. But ISO 42000, so we have a next batch coming up, and you can get in touch with you. We'll able to get on that.
Okay, thank you. And Arif, you have one question, and I unmuted you.
Yeah, just a quick contribution to the previous questioner's comment. I just wanted to point out to IAPP's AI Governance Professional Certification. So I believe that's a good resource as well. So just wanted to add that. It's the AI Governance Professional by IAPP, the privacy organization who runs the privacy certification. So AI Governance Professional is a good resource as well.
Nice. Thanks for sharing that, Mr. Arif.
Thank you. Okay, Sunil.
Thank you. I'll come back to, I'll add another poll, but I'll skip it in consideration of time. I'll move to the most crucial topic, and I'll be honest, I think the whole audience here is probably a bigger expert than me on this. I'll be honest and kind of be true to in terms of my knowledge of what I have gathered and what I've kind of been part of and using and experience, right? So I'll talk to you in terms of basically how are we safeguarding AI systems today, right? And essentially, if you look at key security risks and challenges in AI, and as we scale AI initiatives, it's a lot more and increasingly important to focus on security. And we've talked about some of these in terms of governance and compliance to regulations and everything else. AI can be vulnerable to a lot of and a range of threats, right? From data breaches to attacks and everything else. And what I'll try to cover is some of the key security risks that are associated with AI and some of the best practices that I'm kind of aware of, and how do we kind of protect these systems. Some of the key aspects that we've kind of seen and is more prevalent is essentially data poisoning attacks, right? Data poisoning involves deliberately contaminating data and essentially contaminating training data, right? And basically mislead. And the idea is to mislead the AI model into making incorrect predictions. And using a lot of these models, we are generating a lot of predictive either analytics or responses or action, right? It becomes a real challenge when the training data is corrupted, which means the whole system starts hallucinating. It kind of gives out a lot of incorrect decision making as well. So this attack can basically cripple or severely impact the whole model's integrity, right? And also decision making capabilities, rendering it useless, right? For example, if it's a financial application, a poison data basically can manipulate a model into approving a fraud-related transaction, right? Or reject a real legitimate one. And a lot of false positives and false negatives that start getting addressed will make it a really redundant or invalid system to use anymore. And AI will become a policy or a challenge to use than a complementary and a more accelerant to use, right? Second is in terms of model extraction and a lot of adversarial attacks. Model extraction attacks basically is to steal a complete model, steal a model's functionality, right? By basically repeatedly querying it and recreating its behavior, right? A lot of these large models that are existing today are complex, but there is already an effort to kind of make sure that we are able to kind of replicate the whole behavior for it. It basically will lead to a lot of IP related theft and a lot of unauthorized use of the AI models, and not necessarily what it is meant for, and not it is which is ungoverned usage of this models essentially, right? And some of these adversarial attacks basically involve subtly altering inputs to deceive the model into making the wrong prediction, right? It's very concerning, essentially, when it's high stake environment, right? Like where it's like Tesla, right? Where it's an autonomous driving, or if it's medical diagnosis, right? Where a small modification can lead to a very significant error or invalid diagnosis or an invalid driving scenario that can happen, which would lead to either accidents or deaths or anything like that, right? So it's highly prevalent, and it's one is prevalent, but it's also possible today, right? The second challenge is also in terms of transparency and explainability in AI models, essentially because they're so complex today and they use a lot of deep learning. at the outset of it, you just don't know how some of the responses are coming, how the model is actually able to predict the next response, or it's able to do. But it's so complex today, right? And unless we know how the models are making decisions, you cannot basically ensure its reliability, right? And you cannot basically also address the potential biases that come with that, right? And it's true with any large model that exists today, right? Because it's very increasingly impossible to understand how they are making decisions today. And as they grow bigger and more complex, it starts to grow a little bit more out of control, right? I'll kind of address some of the best practices that are in vogue today, and it probably doesn't cover everything that's in play today. I'll try and cover some of the more prevalent ones, and I'm sure there's a lot more deep dive that's possible to kind of go deeper into some of these and also more expansive into some of these, right? Some of that basically starts from like AI threat modeling and risk assessment, right? When we start doing this, like doing a lot more thorough AI threat modeling, it helps identify a lot of existing or potential vulnerabilities, especially those are really high complex, or in terms of where they are basically being exploited, right? It's basically a proactive approach, and you basically are looking at evaluating the security of the data inputs that are coming in. What is the whole model training process that you're using, and so also deployment environment, right? And the risk assessment should be, it's not be a one-time process. It needs to be ingrained in the whole process as a continuous process. It needs to be adjusting to newer threats as technology evolves, and technology evolving really fast, which means this process needs to be a lot more embedded into the system and process and life cycle itself, right? Second is also in terms of securing the whole development life cycle, right? Like we talked about earlier, security is not an afterthought, but needs to be the first aspect that you deal with before you start development, right? So securing your whole or integrating security into your whole AI development lifecycle becomes really crucial, right? It also includes like secure coding practices, regular testing, like adversarial testing, and a lot of implementation of encryption for data at rest, right? And in transit, basically to make sure that you're not compromising your data. And we talked about some of the threats that are in work today, right? Some of the also additional aspects that you could look at is deploying models in a more secure environment, using containerization. How do you isolate some of these models and reduce the risk of breaches, right? Also in terms of AI explainability and auditing techniques, right? And how do we basically use some of these tools? How do you employ explainability tools, techniques to make sure that AI decisions are more transparent? Like we talked about earlier, as the models go complex, the decision-making becomes more opaque, and you basically want to make sure that the AI decision-making is more transparent, right? It's very important, again, like I think some of the topics that we covered, especially in terms of compliance, right? It is important for us to be handling this or managing this, to be compliant with regulatory and also building trust with users and stakeholders. Unless you're able to kind of do that, your AI systems are not going to take off. You're not going to be able to expand and the use cases or the growth for it, right? And also regularly auditing your AI models, basically to make sure that you are addressing the whole change process and all of those is very critical as well, right? And make sure that they are adhering to some of the ethical standards that you have. And also to correct biases, right? And as you start seeing some of these and as you start seeing some of the responses that are coming in, you want to maintain fairness, you want to address biases, you want to make sure that the model is consistent in terms of performance, right? Coming back to the regulatory compliance and AI governance, I'll not go too deep into it, but in terms of as we go deeper into the use of AI and as AI rises in terms of being more prevalent, regulatory bodies, like we've kind of talked about briefly in the earlier part of the session, are also establishing newer standards. I think that's catching up as well, right? Some of those guidelines are also evolving as the complexity of the AI systems are also evolving. Because let's say Gen AI or Chat GPT wasn't such a big force, let's say 4 years ago or 5 years ago, although AI existed in a very different way. Some of those systems or the standards weren't necessarily needed in that space. But we need to kind of catch up now, especially given the challenges that are arising and the threats that are arising because of the large collection of data and also the kind of data that is being stored, right? So, and it is also to make sure that the AI systems are safe, transparent, and accountable in the first place, right? So, and I think some of you have mentioned in terms of the EU AI Act and the US Algorithm Accountability Act, make sure that it mandates very specific requirements for AI transparency and fairness, right? And also, as we kind of work through organizations also need to be staying informed about some of these regulations. Because when you start looking at governance and compliance, and you don't want to build a system that's not compliant, and you end up with a lot more issues than you would want to face. So I think to a lot of the folks here who are actually in the forefront of some of these, right? I think to be up to date with regulations and how do you kind of build in and integrate compliance into the overall governance framework that you have or evolving becomes a really crucial aspect, right? It also means that you need to set up brand new internal policies for ethical AI use, or also continuous monitoring and reporting of AI activities as well, to make sure that you have a real solid groundwork and governance framework around how do you want to use or build and use some of these systems, right? So in terms of, let's say, examples of where these are really crucial as well, right? Like hospital and healthcare AI. Hospitals have to use really secure AI models for diagnosis because there's a lot of patient data and patient data privacy in play. Has to comply with HIPAA and other regulations that are really, really critical and also very stringent. When it comes to fintech or financial AI systems, a lot of AI governance needs to be in place to protect against fraud, right? And also to comply with a lot of financial regulations, adversarial training that is very, very important here, and also secure model deployment, right? To make sure that you're mitigating some of these risks as well. So across industry, some of these are kind of evolving as well as policies and frameworks and regulatory bodies are also evolving to make sure that they're protecting citizens' rights, citizens' data, and also to localize some of these. And as we talked about, some of the challenges when data is localized versus more international, some of this will really be crucial in terms of managing the viability and also the security around AI system, right? In basic summary, right? And as long as we're kind of safeguarding AI systems, it's not just about protecting data, right? It's also about ensuring the integrity, about the transparency, and also the trustworthiness of your system and the AI models. So that's kind of the fundamental building blocks of anybody using or being able to use that for any system that you want to build, right? I want to kind of move from this topic in terms of moving to how do we empower organizations to build an AI first culture and all of that, and also to kind of integrate these in technologies. I'll take a quick brief poll though, right, in terms of understanding where some of these will affect, right, and how do we, which kind of threats are really concerning for you, right? I'll just take one poll, right, and I'll look to see again understanding where the audience's experience has been, right? And we can kind of launch a little bit more of aspect there. I'll again give you a minute to kind of put in your experience, your challenges that you've kind of faced in terms of security, and we can see what kind of shows up here. Give another 10 seconds to poll in. Okay, I'm ending the poll. Very interesting though, in terms of what challenge that you face. I'd love to kind of open back, and Mr. Rajesh, I'll need your help to kind of unmute folks here who are willing to share some expertise. I think in terms of the spread here, right, a lot of you have kind of had scenarios of data poisoning attacks, and I'd love to hear from you, what have you been able to do, and what have you followed essentially to protect your system from data poisoning attacks? It'll be a really good value add to hear more live examples.
Yeah, and people can raise the hand so that I can unmute them. So far, I have not seen anyone. Yeah. And we have more than 150 participants.
Yeah, I'd love to hear at least one of you can talk about what your real life example has been. I think it'll be a really good value add for all of us to learn from that. So really appreciate if anybody can share, or maybe pick something else that, let's say, in explainability and transparency or regulatory non-compliance. And let's say, if that's your concern, like how do you approach like more interoperable or interpretable, and how do you kind of, or how have you kind of managed or ensured compliance with regulations? Anything, you can pick whatever you kind of faced, and would be really good to hear your exposure to this, or how you've handled that.
Okay. by the time others come back, then I can give you one small update.
Sure.
Okay, we tried to fix 3 problems, and one on the cross-border data transfer. Because when we start implementing the AI, and the data was coming from multiple regions, and because that is what integrated into the system for decision making. One of the biggest challenge to address the Europe, and based on how do we restrict the movement of the information for GDPR perspective, and plus, and we also had some data coming from North America and ANC, or the AP region. Then finally, and we ended up having the instances created and the dedicated instances created across these what do you call, the sectors. And we had one for Europe, one for North America, one for AP, Japan. Then initially it was intended for one single system. Then, and we cloned the system and then restricted the movement of the data within that region. That's number one. And the second challenge was to meet the regulatory requirements. In addition to data privacy, some of the regulations restricted the movement of the data within the country itself. And that India also is going to be one of them once we have the DPDP coming in place. We already have something for telecom and banking, and those sectors, and you cannot move your information outside of India. And the third option, and the HR information itself, correct? And the people's information, and how do you restrict the HR information from outside, and how do you leverage that for your decision making? These are a couple of areas, and we had to do a lots of analysis and consultancy before we integrate the system into AI.
Got it. Sure. Thanks for sharing that, Mr. Rajesh. I don't know if anybody has raised their hand, but yeah, I think in terms of, yeah, there's one.
Sunil, another one, the recent couple of, if you see the media, there are attack happening using the deepfake.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
the organization using the WhatsApp. Say, for example, XY is the top executive of the company, and you are regular user of the WhatsApps. So you can mimic that top executive the voice, and you will able to give the urgency and the criticality of the requirement, and you will able to grab some of the information. These are the things. One example is another example is some of the top companies. The coding system itself, the malicious code, it can be injected using the chat GPT. These are the challenges from the data poisoning and the the social engineering, mainly on the social engineering, which the WhatsApp is kind of a social engineering, using the deepfake. Yeah.
Right. So Raja, I see a couple of hands raised though.
Yeah. So
Shrikant,
one, as I said, Davies has given that exact link. That's what we were saying. A couple of people are asking, what is the best resources for learning AI? So ISACA itself has the training module. So there are a lot of stuffs are in the ISACA website itself, and as the new CISA module also have the latest. The technology incorporated, the CISA module has been updated. That's what we are doing from an auditing point of view. This is CISA exam has been updated, and we did a first batches in this month, and we are coming with the next batch in the next month also. The reason being that a lot of demands are there. So from a ISACA certifications or the AI stuff, we will be organizing more training on whatever the AI stuff available from the ISACA as well. Yeah. So over to you, Sunil.
Sure. Yeah, I think there were a couple of hands raised. I just want to see if there's anybody in the audience who want to kind of share anything on that.
Srikanth can speak, and Davis also speak.
Yeah, I can go ahead.
Yeah.
I'll try to give this as an example. I'm not sure whether this falls into the data poisoning attacks kind of situation. What my company does is they normally have debtors who have to pay back the company. There is something called a claim ID and a PIN. So since this is a personal data, they don't want to use it during the product development. So they try to develop it as a synthetic data, and then create some fictitious claim IDs and then connecting it to a PIN. What it does is the claim ID and PIN go together so that when it reaches the data, he knows that this claim is applicable to that person, because there are millions of people who will have claim IDs and PINs. So you have to segregate them and then send it to the right data actually. So in this case, I am more talking about the output from the product which they are going to develop. Like Cosima is the product, for example, which is the product in the company. So the data that goes into the system when you are developing this may not render the output that is required for the right, what do you call, the data, in the sense the claim ID, the fictitious claim ID and fictitious PIN, the combination of that, and then generating an output of the product. So I don't know whether this is a data poisoning kind of an attack, but I thought this can be an example. So if I am right, it's okay. Or if there is any changes with the way we have to understand that, I would really appreciate
But in
that.
this case, Srikanth, you will be using the synthetic data you are doing for the testing purpose, correct? Not the actual
Yes, you're
case.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Not
not
the
production.
actual
Not
case.
yes. Yeah.
Not production.
Yeah. So this is you are deliberately using for this. That's what the company do, considering the privacy. Yeah. So.
Yeah, but the
Yeah.
product may not behave the right way because you don't have the real data. So when you put it on the field, it might be really behave differently, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Correct.
So,
Yeah, totally. In terms of accuracy of the data, that's never going to be close to what the real data
You are
would
right.
look
You are
like.
right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. That problem. In fact, we are facing that problem. So since there is a lot of GDPR regulations, so here in Germany, they are very strict, and then these supervisory authorities are always having their hawkeyes on organizations who are actually doing this. So they don't have a choice; they have to do this, but the data is not sufficient, and it is giving mostly wrong outputs.
So false positive kind of, correct?
False positive, correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's much less of a security issue, though. I think it goes back to the initial talk and topic that we had. I think Mr. Rajesh had brought it up in terms of viability of the system itself, because you don't have the right data, right? So some of the use cases also, I think somebody else also brought up, the use case itself is rendered invalid, right? But you just can't promote it to a production environment anymore because you just can't trust the model to give you the right output or a decision. So you can't just take it to the market at all. Yeah.
Yes. That is a challenge that we're facing.
Right. Yeah. I know we're kind of rushing against time. There's one additional hand. I think I saw somebody else also willing to share. We'd love to connect here.
Yeah, that was me. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yeah, we can.
Okay. So 2 points. Number one is that ISACA documents related to the AI. There is a quiz also from the ISACA. So very specific to the AI contents. Then if you complete 14 questions out of that quiz, you get 1 CPE as well. And yeah, that's one thing I usually do. It will be helpful. So the second one was I happen to use AI-based capabilities in a SOC, and it was awesome thing. And it helped us to give you the criticality and the summary of the incidents. But then there is always a question of the transparency. So what we did is like the analyst who actually will take the decision, it has made mandate to review the original logs of the the alert. Without that, taking a decision is not recommended at all. So I think that that kind of stuff, if you look at the incident management and the other process, the ethical way of handling it is like the original logs to review before we take a decision. So I think these are like fundamentals. If we follow it, probably we can have bring some transparency to those decisions which AI making, and I think it's very critical for us today's world, particularly the incident management and the SOC systems. So that's something I want to share.
Okay, thank you, David. And there is one question from Mahesh. Mahesh, you can speak, unmute and speak.
Yeah, Thank you. Wonderful session and a lot of interactions with other peers. It's very interesting. My one question to anyone who can answer is that prompt injections are on the rise, and that's the main crux for either it's data poisoning or it could be related to model alterations or anything. Prompt injections are the key root cause. I just want to understand what are the possible preventions that are being adopted, or in your views, what could be the potential prevention measures that one can take?
Mahesh, it's an emerging field. I don't believe anybody will have a good answer to give you.
Mm-hmm.
We still face that.
Okay.
I don't. Okay, even from my experience, also I have not seen much. Maybe.
Actually, some of the organizations are using some kind of an AI shield, for this prompt, engineering, prompt, malicious attack. That's what, especially from the Chat GPT side and everything. The AI shield, there are a couple of tools there available for protecting the prompt engineering. That's what you will put as a protection mechanism as a different tier and do that. That's one of the mechanism. But yeah, this will be a tool based and the policy based control system to get rid of this. Yeah, but if you want to give, we can give that detail what tool can be used for to avoid this kind of attack. Yeah.
Right. And even in our side, I think it's still evolving. And I don't think we've kind of yet narrowed down on a tool that could do, because it's a runtime scenario, right? And not necessarily something that can be done, set up at a configuration or as a mechanism as part of the workflow. But yeah, I think like it's in vogue. It's kind of seen. You've probably seen it already. But yeah, unfortunately, I don't think I have the straight answer to say this tool is the right tool to use that. But yeah, I think we can kind of look at some of the evolving answers for that, and I'm sure there is already something that's in play or a commercial tool that's kind of coming up for that.
Yeah. No, the reason why I asked is because I'm responsible. I function as a chief internal audit for a multinational company, and during my audits, I find this as a risk in some of the implementations that are being done. So that's where as an internal audit, you also carry the responsibility as an advisory or for consulting. So sometimes the question falls back on us, saying that,
Right.
okay, what are the recommendations? And that's the reason I asked to see what others are being doing. Yeah. Okay.
Right. Yeah. Anybody in the audience, though? I mean, anybody else in the participants who kind of face this and maybe want to share how you approach this?
Mahesh, and we will connect after this. And
okay, sure.
To share that the specific one.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Appreciate that. Yeah. Thank you.
Because the various contexts, based on the situation. Yeah, Mahesh can connect.
Yeah. Thank you. I will move forward and coming to the last couple of topics that I want to cover today, and essentially how do we build an AI first culture? How do you kind of empower the organization to kind of think AI and do a lot more in terms of increasing productivity, or do a lot more in terms of what they can build, right? And as you kind of continue to integrate AI into business strategies and everything else, it's very important to foster a culture that kind of embraces these technologies. And we've talked about a lot of these diverse set of technologies, policies, strategies, tool sets. It's vast as well. It's getting vaster as well, right? So an AI first culture basically also looks to see how do we first innovate, how do we empower the organization to do that, how do we stay competitive, how do we make sure these tools are used ethically and effectively, right? And going back to some of these questions that are kind of getting posted, these are critical in terms of setting up internal organization culture and organization policies that are getting set up and as we evolve there as well, right? And as we establish AI as a strategic priority, it's very important that it's positioned as a core strategy, right? And not necessarily as an ancillary strategy. It needs to be at the center of it and making sure that you address everything and as a white elephant in the room, right? It means you're securing executive sponsorship, you're aligning AI initiatives, not just initiatives, but aligning with business initiatives, which makes it all more critical in terms of making sure that you're doing the right thing, aligning the right tech, and also and AI as part of every decision-making process that you're using, right? And as Sundar Pichai, the CEO of Alphabet, basically shared, right? AI is one of the most, I'm just quoting him, AI is one of the most important things that humanity is working on. It's more profound than what fire or electricity was in shaping our future, right? Or is in shaping our future, right? And basically, in terms of how fundamental it is, and it underscores, right, the significance of treating AI as a pivotal element, how we kind of define organizational strategy and how we put central focus to it, right? And also, a very critical aspect is how do we encourage a lot more experimentation and learning, and like we were talking earlier in terms of using synthetic data to make sure that we at least come up with scenarios that you probably not thought of, right? And you not always have data, right? So how do we kind of promote a lot more of experimentation where teams feel encouraged? How do we kind of get empowered to find and explore new AI solutions? How do we learn from both success and failures, right? You will never always be successful because data, of course, is an impediment. And also you would want to kind of break that barrier as well, whether it's regulatory or not, but you still be able to come through it in terms of solutions, right? Not treat them as failures, right? They're more learning than failures, right? How do we create an environment as leaders, as folks who are in play in terms of creating these sort of strategies, right? How do we kind of foster innovation? How do we foster creativity, right? Which is very critical for AI, I mean, in terms of AI development, right? So a lot of these in terms of exposure, right? We want to be able to encourage your teams to stay curious, want to be able to push the boundaries, right, of what's possible with AI, right? You don't want them to be in a shell, right? How do we also build an AI-ready workforce, right? And we talked about earlier, I think Mr. Arif was sharing about how do we make sure that there's a lot of skill development that's happening, right? First, you also have to assess where your teams are, right? You want to be able to look at continuous assessments and not a one-time. Look at where your gaps are, and especially in terms of AI knowledge and capabilities and across teams, right? How do we use these data-driven and insights, right, to make data-driven decisions into developing really targeted upskilling and reskilling programs, right? It's very critical in terms of developing a workforce because you cannot always go to a vendor. You cannot just always hire people. You want to be able to make sure that your workforce is also getting upgraded, especially in terms of a lot of the cutting edge stuff that's coming out in AI technology as well, right? I think a lot of leadership across is kind of highlighting the same, as especially in terms of how do we want to be able to quickly grab and learn new things, even if you can't or don't, you're just going to be falling behind, right? And you have to be able to attempt kind of learning these, otherwise you're going to be left behind, right? And it's very important to make sure that continuous learning is a culture, and especially in rapid evolving fields like AI, right? And also hiring for the right AI talent as well, right? And domain expertise. You cannot always train your workforce. You also need to offset it with a little bit of really high end talent and really expert talent as well. So to be able to do that, you have to be able to attract some of these talent as well, right? And which is also established in the industry who can kind of bring a lot of that subject matter expertise and talent to your workforce. Right? You have to be able to look for those candidates who are not just technical and not just domain expertise, but also to know where AI initiatives can actually go, right? And where are they grounded, right? And how are they what is their understanding about business, right? And your business is essentially, right? So it's not just about being an ML engineer or an AI engineer or somebody who is a real AI architect, but somebody who can understand what AI does to a business, what can it make as a differentiator, or where it can take a business. That's very important when you start looking for talent, right? You also want to be promoting a lot of ethical AI practices, right? And we talked about some of those governance frameworks earlier, right? Especially the AI governance frameworks, right? A lot of these have to be homegrown, built for your firms, built for your organization and teams that will basically ensure that and guide the ethical use of AI across your organization, right? And it's always evolving, right? It includes a lot of setting clear policies on data privacy, algorithmic transparency, essentially, and a lot of accountability on that, right? And a lot of this, again, in terms of, let's say, in the words of Tim Cook, right? Technology should have a clear purpose to serve humanity, right? And if you build with values, you will serve people better, right? And it's a very good reminder for us to understand the importance of embedding ethical considerations into any AI initiative that you would lead, right? And of course, a lot of diversity and inclusion in AI teams, right? And that will basically also make sure that you have a range of perspectives. It's very essential in identifying biases when you start building AI models, and also to create solutions that are really fair and representative, essentially, right? And that's kind of really crucial, right? And when we start looking at some fostering of cross-functional collaboration as well, right? And very AI initiatives are generally very successful when it's collaborative across a lot of functions of the organization. It's not just limited to one, either a HR department or a technology department or anything else, right? Or individual business units. It needs to be collaborative across. And AI experts need to be encouraged to work across domain specialists and with domain specialists very closely as well, right? To ensure that AI solutions are very relevant. It needs to be impactful as well, and it needs to be aligned to business goals, without which they just are not necessarily going anywhere for the business, right? And also, how do we measure AI success, right? And it's very important because you can build all this stuff, and unless it provides an ROI, it's of no use for and pouring in millions into it, right? It is again upfront. You have to be clear, like we talked about security, defining clear KPIs and metrics and measurable essentially, right? It is really important to be able to track some of your AI initiatives and to be able to track the success of it, right? Or the failure of it, right? And focusing on metrics, which is basically in terms of, let's say, model accuracy, right? Deployment speed, how are you saving cost, right? And what are your cost saving levers? What's your revenue impact, right? And we'll basically make sure that your AI projects will deliver real tangible business value, right? And these are really good levers to kind of make sure that you are focusing on and continuously monitoring, right? And not necessarily a one-time process, but it's part of your governance and metrics process and reporting process to make sure that you're kind of providing oversight. Again, just coming back to establishing good governance and accountability frameworks, right? A lot of solid governance frameworks will help you maintain oversight of projects that they meet and all the ethical standards that you need to be able to, and also adherence to compliances, government regulations, regular review of all of these, and also adjusting these frameworks to changes is also very critical, because some of these regulations are also evolving, some of these policies are evolving, like we talked about data privacy and everything else. Every country's regulation, organization policies are evolving, so everybody equipped with that, and the whole governance around it being a lot more solid will help make sure that the whole project is tuned to success, right? In summary, basically, like if we're building an AI first culture, we're basically also involving making AI a very strategic priority, right? And we're basically also making sure that ensuring that continuous learning, having ethical practices, and collaborating across teams is a real crucial aspect, and making sure that it leads to success for the whole initiative, right? I'll then come into my last topic that I want to cover for today, and go into a little bit of what the trends look like, and some of this, not necessarily covering the whole gamut of trends, but in terms of what's coming in and how do we kind of prepare for that, right? And how do we kind of get ready for it? So as we kind of look forward, and what we've seen in the last few years has been terrifyingly magnificent because of the pace of innovation and the pace of change, right? And from what we saw 3-4 years ago, ChatGPT was existing, but nobody picked it up. But in the last couple of years, ChatGPT has become ubiquitous, right? You're basically using it for everything, and there are so many more competitive systems that are coming in, and these systems have not taken years together or decades together to come. They've come in no time, right? And you're seeing evolution of these models every 6 months, and it's shortening or even faster, right? And the number of use cases that are coming up based off these models are endless today, right? And looking at where we're landing in terms of using these, and as we look to evolve a lot more of governance, data management, managing of the security around some of these use cases will become more real, right? And in terms of as we look into the future, it's also essential to anticipate the trends in coming in, right? And also we develop some of these strategies to stay ahead. So as long as we like effectively plan for this, it'll allow our organizations not just survive, but also kind of thrive and kind of adapt to some of these rapidly evolving technology landscape, right? Some of the trends that we're seeing is explainable AI, right? And some of you may already know, and I'm probably not speaking something that's very unknown, but explainable AI, and in terms of how is increasingly important as stakeholders, right? And to being more transparency to AI decision making. We talked about how that's probably a challenge, especially in regulatory atmosphere as well. So XI tools and techniques will help organizations understand and explain how AI models are really making decisions, which is really crucial for building trust and also in terms of building compliance around that, right? And there's a lot of recent report, and Gartner basically reports that a lot of the market for XI solutions expect to grow to almost 20+ billion by 2030. Right? And that growth basically reflects the increasing demand, not just for AI models, but also models that are more accurate, but also more interpretable, right? And also countable in terms of making sure that they are transparent in terms of decision making, right? And again, in terms of AI governance and regulation, and we talked about a lot of the acts that are in play, right? lot of regulatory compliance are critical areas, and focusing into that, right? The UAC, the US Algorithm Accountability Act, a lot of standards coming in play, right? And all organizations need to be proactive in understanding those, and also to be able to adopt, right? And as we kind of move forward, it's also very critical to emphasize the importance in regulation as well, right? And we also need to be participant to that, right? So as Mark Zuckerberg says, we need to also make sure that AI is developed and deployed responsibly, but it's also having a lot more of strong oversight and very clear ethical guidelines, right? And basically somebody coming from somebody who's building a lot of these complex systems, it underscores that at the top, building robust governance frameworks and compliance is very critical to also the future of some of these systems as well, right? AI for social good, right? And there's a growing trend towards leveraging AI for a lot of social causes, social good. How do we address challenges in healthcare? How do we address challenges in education, sustainability, and social justice, right? AI is and can be a very powerful tool for improving lives and solving some of these very complex problems that the world is seeing and pressing issues in the world, right? But unless we're kind of using it ethically and and is used ethically, it's not going to solve the problem. It will become a problem than as a solution, right? And it basically, in terms of how the AI has potential to solve some of these increasingly complex problems and challenging problems, we also want to make sure that it is developed in a way that it is fair and inclusive. And we talked about some of those best practices to be able to do that, right? And it also highlights the importance of integrating like social considerations into AI strategy, right? And it's very critical when we're kind of building out an organization strategy or beyond that, right? And in terms of, let's say, what are the actionable recommendations and insights coming from you, right? So let's say you're kind of doing, building out your strategy and AI strategy with business goals. You have to align first your initiative with the business strategy, right? It's no point of just doing an AI strategy, which is isolated, right? You have to start with real clear objectives, real use cases. What are the success metrics that really tie directly to your organization goals, right? It very clearly aligns that to that in terms of the overall goal of the organization, right? That alignment basically ensures that your projects are focused in terms of being relevant, right? And it's not contributing to an overall strategic vision and not standing in isolated or working in a silo, right? So, and also in terms of, we talked about investing in talent, right? And investing in AI talent and upskilling programs are very critical to be able to make sure that you have the right mix of talent, right mix of continuous learning, also keeping employees motivated and also expanding their knowledge and skills in AI will also keep you ahead as organization leaders to make sure that you're ahead in the overall very rapidly evolving field, right? And a lot of effort that also needs to go in is in terms of cross-functional AI governance frameworks, right? When I say cross-functional governance, you have to be able to create governance councils that are representing different functions of your organization, right? Beyond just IT, legal, HR, operations, oversee together AI development and deployment, right? The whole combined approach or a cross-functional approach basically ensure that AI is used ethically and also complies with regulations across these domains as well, and not necessarily in a single silo domain, right? And again, it ensures alignment to the overall org value as well, right? And also making sure that you're regularly reviewing these governance frameworks is a very critical aspect, right? And you're aligning some of these in terms of considerations and compliance and all of that. And again, last but not least, you basically also want to be able to collaborate a lot more with domain experts and stakeholders to ensure that AI solutions are not just very technically sound, but also are solving real world problems and challenges, right? And that partnership approach will basically tailor your AI solution to very specific needs and not necessarily be very generic, and enhances their impact, right? So that's kind of where, in terms of making sure that if you're involving some of these stakeholders from the start, right? And as we talked about in a security first approach, and also making sure that some of these stakeholders are involved in at least brainstorming from the start, you're also governing the overall solution to be more adoptable, right? And be successful, right? And they're designed with an end user in mind and real world applications in mind, right? So as I conclude this slide in terms of, let's say, a call for action from here, right? Like as we prepare for like the future of AI, I think from all of us who are part of organizational leadership, right, we have to be stay informed of what's the trend today, right? And continuous, and this trend is like changing and ever evolving. How do we build robust strategies? How do we foster a culture of like continuous learning and also ethical governance, right? And that also comes into play a lot more as we build a lot more complex systems, as the governance becomes a lot more active and more becomes more volatile as well, right? And future of AI, right, for all of us holds tremendous promise. but we have to be able to do and realize its full potential, right? And it requires a lot more of deliberate planning, a lot more of thoughtful execution to be able to do that, right? So as we kind of do that, I kind of encourage all of you to kind of take these insights. I'm sure this is just part of what the overall scene is, and I'm sure some of these will be a complementary set to what you're doing. And also to take these recommendations to some of your teams and look to see what they are seeing as well, right? And as we kind of build out the groundwork for an AI-led future, right? Some of these trends will kind of let us stay adaptable. We also kind of look at prioritizing like ethical considerations when we talk about your AI journey, right? So with that, I kind of come towards the end of my session, and I just kind of recapping what I did today, right? And we kind of talked about an AI revolution, right? We did a lot of advancement in AI technology in the recent past, which is kind of transition and transform the way we work, we think, and we solve problems, right? We talked about like success in AI in terms of speed. How do we kind of use, accelerate AI development? How do we look at scale, right? What kind of architectures like microservices and using serverless to other technologies? How do we kind of use that to deploy a lot more large scale workloads for AI? Talked about security, which is a lot more experts here. And I learned a lot of things here. Right now, how do we essentially making sure that we have to stress the need to kind of safeguard AI systems from a lot of emerging threats? And some of these threats are emerging, and we probably still don't have solutions for all of these, and it's ever evolving as well, right? And best practices in terms of data validation, securing your data pipelines to whole model pipeline, your model watermarking, and how do we kind of make sure that we are complying with global AI regulations to maintain trust and integrity, right? And also we talked about like empowerment and culture, very, very significant in terms of building an AI first culture. A lot of continuous learning that is very critical, ethical practices and ethical engineering, right? And a lot of cross-functional collaboration is very critical to understand domain-led considerations as well, right? And we talked about some of the trends in explainable AI, bringing transparency, how the governance is kind of a really critical aspect, and how the robust governance framework will help navigate a lot of the regulatory landscape, right? And in terms of AI for social good, right? We I talked about like how AI can be leveraged to a lot of societal changes, right? Improving healthcare, access to education, promoting sustainability, all the while making sure that we are kind of ensuring ethical considerations are prioritized, right? So yeah, as I kind of wrap up, I'd love to kind of hear if there are any questions, but I would love to encourage everybody who's been here to kind of use some of these, and I'm sure some of you are already using, but as you move forward, these are critical aspects that you would want to take as actionable steps, right? As you integrate AI into your organizations, as you do strategically as well, and of course, aligning to your organization goals, right? And as you kind of make sure that your need for continuous adaptation and learning, right, is a very critical aspect as you kind of look at the rapidly changing landscape, right? So yeah, as I conclude, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, continue, because it was amazing, and I can see that all. I did not see much people dropped, and more than one people are still alive. And yeah, I did cut you in between. You have something to say more, correct?
No, I just had my final thoughts, right? And essentially to wrap up, and like I was mentioning earlier, AI is here, right? And the potential is like phenomenal, right? And it's transformative for all of us in our lives, in our careers, and everything else. I think it needs a lot of thoughtful development and making sure that we are all kind of actively participating in development and deployment to make sure that we reap the benefits of it, right? So I think everybody is already using, but if not, I encourage everybody to use AI technologies with a focus in terms of innovation and of course ethics and really long-term success. So thank you for the opportunity, and I'd love to see if there are any questions, but if not, I have my contact information and I have some references that I can share later. But yeah, that's me, and I'd love to hear and connect with a lot of you and hear from you as well and learn from you as well.
Thank you. Sunil, it was a fantastic session. And if you look at that, being the emerging area, and like any other technology, and I will not say this is evolving and evolved in some stage, and it is unavoidable for all the organization, because nobody can say that I will not use AI ML and the latest technology, because then if you're not using that, then you will be out of the business, like we have seen like Nokia, and some of the other organization did not exist when they did not adapt to their new changes. It was a fantastic information, but if you ask me today, is it enough? No. People are learning lots about AI and even the use cases and how do I create the framework. And there were lots of questions on how do we create a framework for AI, while Europe has come up with something, but is it enough? No. And all of us are learning, and we need to contribute to the success of AI and ML for your organization. And that's what we need to do. And plus, along with that, I just wanted to talk about once again for Isaka Bangalore chapter. And I request those who are well trained for education or conducting sessions for CPE session, or maybe the review classes for CISA, CGAT, or CSAM, CRISC. And if somebody is interested and they have experience in conducting the review classes, they can contact the Bangalore chapter, and we will empanel you as one of the speaker for the sessions. That's number one. And if you have a good idea for future CPE sessions, and you can reach out to me or Raj or Vijay Vanida or any one of us or the Bangalore chapter, and we will be able to get more insight and give back to the community on regular basis. And with that, I hand over to Vijaya for giving some concluding remarks along with Raj. Vijaya, back to you.
Yeah, I thank Rajesh for I'm asked to probably propose a vote of thanks. Okay, so that was an inspiring presentation, Mr. Sunil. Your years of research, your depth of understanding, and your ability to present the subject in such an interesting way produced one of the most memorable evenings in RCPE history. I personally appreciate your approach to our audience query, right? The subject intrigues us, and learning AI is a never ending curve, I'm very sure. Now, I would like to thank the audience of Riyadh chapter, Sri Lankan chapter, and Bangalore chapter for making time to sit through the CPE presentation. It was lively, engaging, educative, and fulfilling because of your presence. I would like to thank ISACA Bangalore chapter for organizing the CPE for the benefit of our professional members. So before I conclude, I would like to remind everyone about the upcoming Community Day celebration on 5th October 2024. We encourage every one of you there to join us as a member or participant, right? Thank you all once again. Thank you.
So thanks, Vijaya. So I would like to thank Mr. Ali, the president of Riyadh chapter, and Hussein, secretary of the Riyadh chapter, and from Sri Lanka, Silachi, for sharing this our CPE information with members, and for a large number of joining from all these chapter to joining our CPE. We'll continue to work on this collaboration. Sunil, as a token of appreciation, we'll be sending a small token of appreciation to your resident. And so definitely you are staying near to our old chapter. We would like to have a coffee in person with our members going forward.
Definitely.
Thank you for a fantastic session. Yeah.
Thank you, Rajesh. I truly appreciate the opportunity and everybody to be patient and hearing me through my whole 1 hour of rant here. But I'm sure all of you had some insights, and I'm sure all of you will have a lot of things to collaborate and ponder over. So thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yes,
Stay safe. Good night. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.